Я бы хотела поблагодарить организаторов за возможность участвовать в этой конференции. Очень было интересно услышать о разработке методологии и процессов ОЗТ в странах СНГ. Удачи вам. Сегодня я хотела бы поделиться своим опытом работы в NICE. Хотела бы презентовать свою презентацию на английском языке. Okay, in my presentation, I will cover a little bit about national health services in the UK and how it works, and about NICE's involvement in it and its role in the developing clinical guidance. I have to mention that United Kingdom consists of 4 countries. As you may know, it's Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And all 4 countries have their own health system under national health services. Should emphasize that NICE makes recommendation only to England, covers only England. Therefore, my presentation will cover mostly England. NHS is one of the largest publicly funded health systems in the world, and it employs over 2 million people, and it serves around 3 million people every week, and it's completely free for residents in the UK. It has limited funding, which is around £100 billion per year. Therefore, the United Kingdom and England needed some system and structure in place to make sure that this money is spent wisely. I have to mention that NHS celebrated its 70th birthday last year, and NICE, National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, this year celebrated 20th birthday. In 20 years, NICE has expanded its functions widely, and it includes not only clinical guidelines development, but also health technology assessments, quality standards, evidence reviews and evidence synthesis, and many more areas of healthcare. So let's see how NHS looked before NICE was established, before 1999. So actually there was no quality standards in NHS, and there was massive evidence overload and no guidance for professionals. Also there was variation of availability of treatments, so-called postcode lottery. It meant that if you live in the wealthier part of England, you get better healthcare, you get better technologies, and your health outcomes become better. There were raising costs, and new expensive technologies were not used wisely as well. And innovative treatments were underused because there was no access to those treatments. So for those reasons, NICE was created, and it kind of helps to slow uptake of new technologies and practices, and it helps to overcome a widespread variation in the nature and quality of care. There was and there is still growing public concern and increasing media criticism in NHS and how the money is spent in NHS. So NICE helps to address this issue. Also, there is a government commitment to improve the quality and range of care, and there are prospects of significant reinvestments in NHS. NICE's NHS constitution mentions that everyone who is treated in NHS has the right to use the guidance and technologies recommended by NICE, and it's been established in 2002. So are the NICE's guidance mandatory or not? So to this question could answer yes and no. Certain guidance is mandatory, but certain is not. NHS organizations are legally required to provide access to drugs that NICE approved through the technology appraisals program. However, the other NICE guidance, including clinical, public health and social care, is just advisory guidance, but is not mandatory. This is just a summary of the evidence of what works and what doesn't work, and is not intended to replace clinical judgment. But later on in my presentation, you will see how the clinical guidance use is still used in NHS and it's followed. So what is the NICE clinical guidance? It's evidence-based recommendations for health and care in England. It sets out the care and services suitable for most people with specific condition or need, and people in particular circumstances or settings. Topics for NICE are referred by ministers through NHS England, and Department of Health and Social Care, or Department for Education. This mostly involves the treatments related to children and young people, young adults. NICE guidelines involve clinical, public health and social care topics. Public health and social care topics were included in the NICE's mandate only in 2013, so NICE has some experience in evaluating those topics as well. So key principles of guideline development is that the guideline needs to be useful to the use in health and care system, and it should improve decisions and therefore outcomes for patients. It should promote cost-effective use of public resources. And it's not a textbook. It should address areas of uncertainty or variation, and they do not replace, as I said, clinical or professional judgment. And how we mentioned that nobody can tell to use A or B for B and C conditions. So clinical and professional judgment is still first place. And guidelines are based on best available evidence and by guideline committee consensus. Therefore, the process needs to be systematic and transparent. And NICE guidance are developed by independent advisory committees. So NICE decisions involve many considerations in guideline development. It's not only cost effectiveness and clinical effectiveness. Also, NICE looks at the extent of the uncertainty that evidence brings. Other social values like ethics, equity, and rights. It was mentioned in the morning session today. Also, the practicalities of implementation, how easy or how difficult certain guidance could be adopted in the NHS. And also legal and political constraints. So guidance development is a quite lengthy process, and it can take up to 2.5 years to develop. And once guidelines is commissioned, the committees are set up and the committee chair is recruited. Then NICE scopes the topic. This includes the outlining the setting where the guidelines will be used. And the longest process is for developing actual guidance. All NICE's developed guidelines go through rigorous pre- and post-consultation, and NICE takes into account the view of the clinical experts and people involved in healthcare provision. Then guidelines are validated and publicated on NICE website. So scoping is one of the first processes, and it's done by NICE. It comprises a pre-consultation stakeholder workshop and a 4-week consultation period with stakeholders. Scoping sets out what the guideline will and won't cover, and it takes up to 20 guideline review questions for standard clinical guidance. For public health or social care, it's a lower number of questions, and it defines the population and setting and identifies key issues and questions for clinical development. So draft scope is consulted, and then final scope is finalized, and then the clinical guidance process begins. So who is involved in the developing guidelines? So NICE's Center for Guidelines is a commissioner and quality controller, and NICE works with 2 external developers and for clinical guidance and public health and social care guidance developed mostly internally in NICE. Guideline committees, people involved in guideline committees include clinicians, researchers, service managers, health economists, patients, carers, and depending on topic can be any additional people that are interested or important in the guideline development. For each clinical guidelines, NICE recruits a separate committee, and so there is always a big interest in being involved in NICE guideline development. Other teams at NICE include public involvement program, implementation team, and editorial and publishing team, as well as communications team. So as you can see, it's a wide range of professionals involved in the clinical guidance development in different stages of guidance development. So development itself includes developing a review question and planning the evidence review, identifying the evidence, reviewing the evidence, incorporating economic evaluation, and developing recommendations. Economic evaluation is done mainly by NICE, internally by NICE health economists, whereas the evidence review mostly done by external bodies. So as was mentioned, systematic review is the gold standard, and NICE adopts it, and it uses for kind of outlining the evidence base. And NICE also adopts the grading system. So where there are gaps in evidence or uncertainties due to limitations in evidence, NICE can search for answers by call for evidence, by expert testimony, committee consensus, or research recommendations to improve the evidence base for future updates, meaning that NICE can issue some recommendation to consider some evidence development in certain areas if there are gaps in evidence. Validation and publication process happens at NICE, and once guideline is drafted, there is a stakeholder consultation that involves all relevant people in the process. Then guidelines are revised and signed off by guidance executive, and it's released to stakeholders and then published online in a public domain. Guidelines are updated every 2 to 5 years, I think, and it's important to mention that different situations can trigger the guidelines updating process. And once guidelines are published, they become subject to regular surveillance review, and a decision taken whether to update fully or partially the guidance are being taken. Then again, this process starts again, and the scope is updated. The topic experts recruited to the committees, they they're having training, they develop review protocols and conduct systematic reviews. Then evidence is presented to the committees again, and recommendations amended. And then again, it goes through consultation and review, guidance executive sign-off, and goes to publication. I should mention that HTA and clinical guidelines development is related to each other. For example, HTA can trigger clinical guidelines update, or new clinical guidelines can trigger HTA update, for example. So it's kind of self-related. As I mentioned, clinical guidelines are not mandatory to follow. However, they are used to inform quality standards in NHS. NICE looks at the guidance published and then looks at where these guidance could be used to produce quality standards. And based on those quality standards, the quality improvement in healthcare and social care are considered, and quality standards cover areas where there is variation in care. And each standards set statements to help to improve quality. And they provide information on how to measure progress. And on this level, healthcare providers on the local level decide where they can, where their priority area is and what spend their funding on. So in this case, you can see that clinical guidance kind of are mandatory to follow. So in conclusion, NICE guidelines are developed through independent committees, and they use full systematic review processes, and they apply latest technologies to assess evidence, and are kept under constant surveillance and updated when necessary, are very closely to develop and maintain, as many people are involved in that, and add enormous value and consistency to healthcare delivery. They also undergo a detailed consultation and quality assurance processes. Thank you. And I guess we'll have questions later or right now.
Спасибо большое. Вы знаете, можно я вам задам сразу несколько вопросов, которые у нас пришли по вашему выступлению? Но у нас не успели еще проголосовать за них. Только один вопрос получил 1 лайк. Сколько длится и какой бюджет на разработку одной клинической рекомендации, если можно?
Длительность разработки клинических? Да,
2,5.
от 2,5 года. Но это зависит от топика.
Понятно. И стоимость, бюджет?
Стоимость бюджета я, наверное, не смогу сказать.
Но, по крайней мере, бюджет есть, да?
Да, бюджет есть.
Следующий вопрос. Как NICE решает конфликты, если они такие существуют, в клинических рекомендациях между NICE, клиническими рекомендациями, и клиническими рекомендациями ассоциаций, которые есть? Такие вообще возможны?
Я отвечу на английском. Мне кажется, такие вещи невозможны, потому что it's possible that could be conflict, but NICE takes into account the international guidance, and it will list international guidance under systematic review results. So there won't be a conflict, as they cannot contradict. It's just can be used as evidence as base of results of systematic reviews.
Спасибо. Следующий вопрос. У вас есть клинические рекомендации, у вас есть HTA по новым технологиям, лекарственным препаратам и так далее, и у вас есть HRG, вариант DRG нашего КСГ. Это тарифы на оказание медицинской помощи. И существует связь. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So do you have and how short is this link between changes in clinical guidelines and changes in DRG, in HRG?
I'm not sure about changes in HRG, but clinical guidance and HTA are related. So once HTA is done and drugs are recommended, they are added to the clinical treatment pathway at NICE. So, and it's linked to clinical guidelines. So,
and it's closely linked?
It is closely linked, yes.
Okay.
It's directly linked to each other.
И еще один вопрос. Разрабатывает ли NICE критерии качества лечения конкретного пациента? То есть не показатели, критерии качества на уровне стационара, на уровне больницы, на уровне
Нет.
отделения? Нет?
No, NICE provides guidance on national level, and then it goes to clinical commissioning groups to decide on their local area what requirements are and what needs are for that area's patient population.
And these groups are part of what?
Clinical commissioning groups, CCGs, are part of NHS,
NHS,
and
okay.
they are in each area of England, and there are like 200 something.
Окей. Вопросов вроде пока нет. Тогда спасибо большое. Маленький
Спасибо.
опрос. Будьте добры.